Okay, if you're in the chat, please just let me know. Got off to a late start. Actually, we started on time, but the software was giving a little trouble. So let's see. Okay, so as we wait for people to join in, I will share a few things. Thanks for all the support that we've been getting. Yes, sir. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for all the support we've been getting. And we have reached 1,310 subscribers. And we have also just hit the requirement and met the requirement for first phase monetization. And what that means is we can now have members join the channel. So if you're in the chat and you see some links to join and become a member, please check those out. Must make sure they work. So, all right, now let's get started. Years ago, when I was involved in network marketing, we learned that the show must go on. So it doesn't matter if there's one person or even zero people, we'll still do the show. And when I do my workshops, sometimes I remember once I did a workshop where one person showed up and I gave gave the full treatment, gave them a really good workshop as if it was a full room, and he was very appreciative of that. So with that said, you can start out with your questions. However, I do have some that people have been asking, so let me jump into those. Let's see. One of the great questions I had that was sent to me by um, the exotic foreigner. And if you ever get a chance, check out the exotic foreigner. He's also someone who is a nomadpreneur who was interested in escaping the rat race. So he left Brooklyn, New York, and is now living in Kazakhstan. So you can check out his channel. And one of the questions he sent me ahead of time, which I'm grateful for, is do you have access to all things that are in the mainland? So here on Saipan, we are part of the US, so it's a commonwealth. So we're on the US postal system, we're on the US banking system. We drive on the right side of the road, so it's for all intents and purposes, it is the US. However, because we're out here on the other side of the world in the Western Pacific, then getting access to certain things that might be easier in the States is not, in the mainland, is not as easy here. So, however, because of the internet and because of shipping, whether it's through FedEx or the US Postal Service or DHL, we do, for the most part, have access to most of the things that you would be able to get in the mainland. But there is a caveat, and part of that is not things are not always available all the time. So, for example, there are certain things that I like. Let's say I like my Terra chips and my Laura bars. Those may come in on the next shipment, on the next container, but once they sell out, it might be another month or two before they actually get replenished. Other things that you might want, Amazon does ship here within 7 to 10 days. So there are things you can buy online, you can buy from eBay. So for the most part, things are available here, but the selection is not as wide. I remember there was a young lady who was a little ticked off that she couldn't get certain stationery that she wanted, that she liked for her notes and for her diary or whatever. She couldn't get the stationery that was ruled in the particular way that she liked. So there are certain things you can't be too anal retentive. You can't be too high maintenance. So, but for the most part, you can get most of the things you're used to getting. I will say that sometimes, however, when you're shopping on Amazon, because of certain legalities, certain rights that vendors may or may not have on this side of the world, you might not be able to get certain items shipped here. For example, if I'm ordering a special Sony product, because of certain rights that are negotiated for different regions, the vendors on Amazon cannot ship the items here to me on Saipan. So I'll have to send it to a friend in the States who's gracious enough to then mail it to me here on Saipan. But for the most part, from my experience, um, you just have to be a little patient in order to get certain things that might be a little difficult. So thanks, One Man Show. Thanks, Joseph. Feel free to ask any questions. The purpose of this is actually to answer your questions, so please feel free. Uh, I do like the sound of my own voice, but the goal is not to keep rambling. And then the next question was, do you have access to international goods like Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Thai products? Yes, we have, uh, because there is still a Japanese population here, a Chinese population, even though those are getting smaller, and a Filipino population, there are certain items that vendors who cater to those markets will have shipped in. So I can get certain Chinese items that I might like, dried herbs, astragalus and other Codonopsis and other dried herbs, mushrooms, black fungus that are coming from China, or maybe through vendors in the States, and then from China to vendors in the States, and then here to Saipan. So yes, we can get access to certain items, Chinese, Japanese, and Thai, but those numbers are, that availability has suffered a bit, especially when the garment factories closed. A lot of the Chinese population left, and some of the items, some of the abundance of those items was affected. All right, so let's see here. Can you drive a golf cart on the island? Yes, there are actually people in my neighborhood who are driving golf carts around, and um, the legality of it may be in question, but again, it's a matter of enforcement. So yes, I have seen people driving golf carts around within the neighborhood, within a small area, just around their homes and on the streets. But that's a good question as to whether that's legal or not. It's probably not roadworthy, so it's probably not legal to do it. But there are people who do it within the confines of a small neighborhood. So you might be able to get away with it. Let's say if you live near a supermarket, as I do, you could probably drive your golf cart up to the supermarket and just avoid the cops and get back home. Okay. Do consumers of those international products live there long term or only for a short time on Saipan? Uh, Good question, sir. The people who are buying Filipino products are Filipinos who are contract workers who've lived here, some as many as 30 years in certain cases. The people who are buying Chinese products are also residents. So for the most part, those items are being stocked for people who live here. There may be certain items that are stocked for the benefit of tourists, but those would be minimal for several reasons. One, the tourism market is really volatile, so it wouldn't be a good business model for you to stock items specifically for tourists. Many tourists who come here are looking for the American experience, so they're probably more interested in going to McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken than they are buying items that they can get in their homelands. So, good question. Yes, the items that are here that are catering to the Thai market. We had a lot of Thai girls working in the garment factories. The ones who were catering to the Chinese market, though we also had a lot of Chinese girls working in the garment factories. There are still a lot still here, and that's who they're catering to. Good question. Okay. Um, in the downtime, I'll just keep repeating, and I hope you guys don't mind, that you can now become a member of the Discover Saipan channel. So if you are so inclined, you can click on the join button on the home page and look at some of the options. There'll be special videos that are members only. There will be certain perks that only members can access. For the most part, though, everything stays essentially the same. All the videos that are now available will be visible as well. I may make one or two members only just to coerce you guys into becoming a member. So keep in mind, you can join at the lowest level or the highest level. It starts as low as 99 cents per month, and you can cancel at any time. So if all you wanted to do was just donate 99 cents, you could do that and then cancel before it gets renewed for the next month. So we have reached that first stage of monetization. You can become a member, and you can also donate during this chat, during this live stream. So you could add let's see, a super chat to the, let's see, to your question, and that'll impress your friends and neighbors. Let's see. Okay, next question. Do some of those contract workers use Saipan as a gateway to move or work in the mainland? Yes, but to do so would be illegal. So Saipan has a unique visa program. It's called a CW1 visa. So there are many workers here on the island. There are a lot of Filipinos, contract workers, and Chinese contract workers, about 20,000. In fact, the majority of the population is probably contract workers. And though they would like a pathway to citizenship, the CW1 visa does not allow that. It's essentially a work permit. So if someone is here on a CW visa, it is because an employer sponsored them for them to come and work here. And if they lose that job, if they are laid off for whatever reason, then they have a certain period of time in order to get a new employer. I don't know, might be 90 days or so. But if they don't, then technically and legally they are um, deportable, and they are now overstaying. So the way that people um, make it a pathway to citizenship and eventually going to the mainland is that they may marry someone who's a U.S. citizen, and then from that point they can get a green card and then ultimately move to the United States. But for many years, that was the plan for a lot of people, men and women, who would come here and fall in love with a local or an American, and then by virtue of marriage, they could then get a green card and passport. So, um, so yes, some of them do use that, but you cannot, if you are here on a CW1 visa, you cannot simply jump on a plane and go to the US um, by virtue of having that visa. Okay, even though I'm in excellent health at age 60, what if I was to have a heart attack? Would I be able to be treated on the island, or would I have to go to Guam? I'm sure things like a heart attack they can handle here on Saipan. However, there are certain instances where you might have to be airlifted to Guam, or if it's not an emergency and you have the ability to plan, you might have to go to Guam or maybe Thailand or the Philippines. I'll give you a personal example. I had, and one of the reasons you see me in glasses a lot is because I'm still a little self-conscious about how my eye looks after a vitrectomy surgery that I had in Manila. So the doctors here on Saipan were not able to perform the vitrectomy here, so I had to make an appointment at St. Luke's Hospital in Manila in order to get that done. So there are certain procedures that are not available here, for which you would have to go to a specialist, perhaps on Guam or in another country in the area. Okay. What made me choose Saipan over the USA? Oh, I've done entire books, and this entire channel is devoted to that. But the main reason for me was, let me list maybe three or four. The weather. I don't like cold weather. For me, that's not normal. I was born on a tropical island, Jamaica, so my concept of reality revolves around sunshine and warm weather, even though that might be boring for some people. One of the reasons that Saipan appealed to me was because the weather. We're in the Guinness Book of World Records as having the most equable temperature in the world, 79 to 89 all year round. So the weather was one. The sense of disconnection was also something really interesting. You would think that in a city, I lived in New York, you would think in a city of 9 million people that feeling isolated would not be an issue. But if you've ever lived in a big city like New York, and I've heard Tokyo is the same, perhaps Shanghai and Beijing as well, is that everyone is doing their own thing. Everyone is hustling and bustling to get from one place to another. So just because you're in a crowd doesn't mean you can't also feel isolated. So there was not that connection um, in New York. I lived in an apartment building in Harlem for many years and lived there for years and never ever saw or met my next door neighbor who lived, right across the hall. So there's that. There's the coldness. There's the hustle and bustle. There's the hostility. There's a level of stress. There's the fact that um, everything is based on money. There, just the crowdedness. So there are lots of different reasons why I prefer Saipan over New York. And I could go on and on and on, but those are the main ones. So here, the weather is nice, the people are friendlier, there's less stress, there's no parking meters, no sales tax, no property tax. There's not this drive to generate money at every turn. So again, there's no parking meters. The cops are not on a quota system where they are required to give out a certain number of tickets, uh, to fill a quota. So it's just a slower pace of life, more human. I've told this story before where, you might run into a police officer and for who pulls you over, and because he's not on a power trip, because he's not um, subject to a quota, he can be more humane in how he treats you. And I bring that up because I had a friend who used to work as a meter maid in the States. And he said after a while he couldn't do it because it was affecting his psyche. He had to quit because he would, come up to someone who was parked at a fire hydrant, and then an old lady would walk out and, say, "Oh, please don't give me a ticket." But he would have to because he has a quota to fill. So it forced him to be inhumane to people and non-caring and empathetic to such a degree that it affected his psyche, and he had to quit. So, long-winded answer, but generally I find just life to be more human here on this side of the world. So that's one of the reasons. Okay. Um, what about getting solar panels and batteries from Amazon? Specifically solar panels, I'm not aware of. I'd have to look into that. Follow up with me on that and I'll let you know if the shipping, or, what you could do is simply just change your ship to address on your Amazon account. Make it make up a PO Box 12345, Saipan, and then when you click on the item on the Amazon.com website, you'll either see a message that says, "Sorry, we cannot ship this item to your location," and that'll let you know whether the items are shippable here to Saipan. So that's one good way for you to test. But certain batteries I have been able to get, but others, as I mentioned, I had to send to a friend in the States for it to get shipped to me. Okay. Occasional thoughts about Saipan for me, maybe even a business venture for me. I speculate, but it's a mere wandering only. Um, Starting a business. I wrote a book many years ago called Doing Business on Saipan. And some of the technical information in terms of how to apply for a business has changed, but there are still some ideas in that book. If you do a search on Amazon, Doing Business on Saipan, you'll see it. Again, it's outdated in terms of the forms and the procedure for setting up a business. It's actually a bit easier now, but the ideas on what could work and what would work and what wouldn't work here on Saipan, I think are still valid. So you can check that out on the saipanliving.com website, or again, you can check out um, amazon.com for doing business on Saipan. One thing I will suggest to you, however, is some advice that I've given to many people is that if you are planning on relocating here, that you set up streams of income such that you are not dependent on the local economy for your survival. So if you can do something that is done remotely, is something that's digital, um, something that maybe even a YouTube channel or something through which you can generate your income online and without geographic restrictions, that would be a better bet, in my opinion. So, but there are certain, if you're the type who likes to hire people, if you're the type who likes to have a physical business and storefront, there are certain things that will work and certain things that won't work on the island. Let me give you an example. So, someone might say, okay, how many people are there on Saipan? 44,000 people at the last census. And they might say, okay, well, Starbucks is pretty popular. Then I'll probably start a Starbucks, and I have a market of 44,000 people who I can sell that to. But the thing to understand about Saipan is that even though we have a population of 44,000, there are distinct groups of people. So it's not a homogeneous market. You have a local population, you have a mainland population, you have a Filipino population, you have a Chinese population. And for various cultural or economic reasons, those groups will view paying $12 for a cup of coffee as in different ways. So you do not have a market of 44,000 people for every business venture that you establish. So just something to keep in mind, and something that I go over in the book Doing Business on Saipan, which you might find helpful. Okay, is it easy to travel between islands like Guam? Is it expensive? Right now, to get to Guam from Saipan, the only way to get there is through United Airlines. There is another route you could take. You could go through our commuter airline, go through Rota, and then from Rota to Guam, if I'm not mistaken. But the only way to get to Guam right now is through United Airlines. Um, so they have a monopoly essentially, and it's anywhere from 200 to $400 to get to Guam. So yes, we can get there, but it can be a little pricey depending on your budget. But there have been moves recently to make the price a little bit more affordable, as the community sort of petitioned to United to loosen their purse strings a little bit. That has indeed happened. And if you email me, I'll give you some insights in how to get cheaper flights to Guam. Okay, and also Tinian, yes, you can get to Tinian, you can get to Rota. In the past, we had commuter airlines, and there at one point we had Freedom Air, we had Star Marianas, we had different airlines. Now there's only one. So the only way to get to Tinian, for example, or to Rota, are the three inhabited islands, the other two inhabited islands, is through Star Marianas Airways, but travel is possible. Okay, so let's see what else we have here. All right. Is it really possible to be vegetarian or vegan only on Saipan? I believe it is. I am vegan. I've been vegan for many years now. I eat locally. I cook for myself. So that's why it is possible. Like this morning, for example, I went to Sabalo Market, and I've done videos on that as well. I buy fresh fruits and vegetables, and that's what I eat. So for me, it is possible. However, if you are interested in dining at certain restaurants right now, the only one that comes to mind that I would consider eating, and I'll give them a free plug, is Everest Kitchen. So they have a buffet, and once in a while you'll see me pop in to get some food and then pop back out. But there are a few um, establishments that can offer meatless cuisine, but it is meatless cuisine as opposed to vegetarian fare. So there aren't any more restaurants. There used to be one that catered specifically, and their entire menu was vegetarian and vegan, but the demand has been low. I'm the only one, and no, there are a few. And so the uh, existence of restaurants that cater specifically to vegans and vegetarians is low. Okay. I have a 40-year career as an entertainer on the mainland. I'm wondering if I'd be able to get gigs on the island. I'm a stand-up comedian and singer impressionist. I believe you had asked that question before about the live music scene. The live music scene on Saipan is virtually non-existent right now. There might be performances at certain bars. You might see live performers at Godfather's Bar. I haven't been there in years, but I know they had live performances. Some of the hotels may have live performers as well, but for the most part, I haven't seen any announcements of any performers coming from Guam or from Hawaii or from the Philippines. That used to happen years ago, but not so much now. So if you were to do something, you would probably have to promote it yourself. You would have to be your own promoter. So stand-up comedy, perhaps a hotel might be willing to hire you. But again, the thing to keep in mind is that since tourism right now is down, and since our majority market is South Korea, unless you can do your stand-up in Korean, the the willingness of the hotel to hire you might be a little bit limited. But if it's promoted to the local community, and there are ways you could do that as an individual. You could go on the local radio stations, you could put an ad in the newspaper promoting yourself. You might do one or two free shows just so people can get familiar with you. So, but it would require you to take a more hands-on approach to promote yourself and to get something like that going. Okay. Will you? Okay. Someone asked a question and someone else already answered it. So the question was Saipan's significance in World War II. So the really short version is, and by the way, I've done videos on my tours. For the most part, most of the people who are coming for my tours are interested in World War II. So they do my World War II pilgrimage tour, which you can learn about at discoversaipan.com. But Saipan's significance was this. The US attacked Saipan and captured it from the Japanese. From there, they were able to then capture Tinian, and Tinian proved to be the staging point for the launching of the B-29 bombers that then bombed Japan, ultimately bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing Japan to surrender, ending the ending the war in the Pacific region. So that's a short version. So Saipan has very significant military significance for the ending of World War II. And again, many people who are familiar with the Pacific Theater come to Saipan to see where the Battle of Saipan took place, and then they'll go to Tinian to see where the runways from which the Enola Gay and Boxcar took off to bomb Saipan. So very significant military significance. And that is one of the claims to fame that Saipan has. In fact, as you go around the island, you'll see many bunkers and blockhouses and pillboxes and tanks that are still here from the 80 years ago from the Battle of Saipan. Okay. All right. Okay, another great question that I got, let's see, is this is an easy one. Are the residents of Saipan religious? Absolutely. So we have a Spanish influence, a Spanish controlled Saipan from the 1540 all the way up to the German colonial period and then the Japanese. So for 400 years, the Spanish were influential here. And as a result, Catholicism took hold in the island or was foisted upon the local population. So most Chamorros are Catholic. The entire island is Catholic as a result. Then you have Filipinos who are also coming from a Spanish tradition and a Catholic tradition. So yes, the majority of the island is Catholic. We do have Muslims. We do have Church of Latter-day Saints. We have a few from the Baha'i faith. Um, and let's see, I'm sure there are some Jewish folks on the island, but I'm not aware of any synagogues here on Saipan. But yeah, very religious and primarily Catholic. Okay. Um, Saipan is most strategic to the USA, consistent with Asian interests. Yes, David Parker, absolutely. Uh, That's one of the reasons why the tinian runways are now the focus of a refurbishing and repaving, because the U.S. is shoring up its strategic presence here on this side of the world. As I mentioned, Saipan was significant as a U.S. Possession in order to end the war against Japan. And it remains a militarily strategic location. So, yes, when it comes to the US having a presence in proximity to North Korea or China, then that's why Saipan and this part of the world figures very prominently in securing US interest. Okay. And since we're here, someone had asked a question, and I just did a video on it in terms of Howley hate. And I and we've gotten a lot of good feedback from people who are um, locals here and people who are residents here. So check that out. It's something that might be of interest to you, especially if you're considering relocating here. The question was essentially, if the local population harbors any animosity towards whites in particular, people of European descent, Caucasians. And it was an interesting question. And the video is getting a lot of attention. So once this live stream is over, check out the latest video under the videos tab, and you'll see not only my response in terms of the indigenous populations interaction with whites, but also some local folks, some residents here who are chiming in as well. So it's very, very fascinating. And please join in. If you're someone living on Saipan and you have some insight, please do share to let other people know what they might be able to expect living here on Saipan. All right. So we're up to 16 folks. That might be a record. And again, there should be a way for you to check out the membership option here on the Discover Saipan channel. So look around the screen for that. Let me know if you see that. But okay, any more questions? Is there much ecotourism? There are people, not Okay, there are people who will come to Saipan specifically to do scuba diving, to see some of the flora and fauna and sea life that we have here, but I don't believe there's any targeted ecotourism um, for the most part. We people here are familiar with um, the decay of the coral reefs. We have people who are into environmental protection, who are always um, in the local news, speaking about Saipan maintaining Saipan's pristine ecology. But there is no ecotourism that I'm aware of to speak of. No one who is catering specifically to that market. Um, if there's anyone watching who is familiar with anything, please do leave it in the comments or add it to the chat. Okay. Um, the question was, are there conservative organizations and potentially seasonal permanent positions? Yes, I am sure there are. One of the things that you might want to do if a local organization or business is interested in hiring, then they are required to put out a notice for that position. So I can provide a link in the description when it's uh, later on. But look, if you can do a search on YouTube, I mean on Google for job vacancy announcements, Saipan, job vacancy announcements, Saipan. Uh, Companies that are looking for employees are required to post a JVA, job vacancy announcement, and there you can look at what jobs are available. So that might be helpful. Uh, all right, this is a question I can already see I may not be able to answer, but the question is just wondering what to do when transporting firearms when moving to Saipan to be declared there at the airport and shipped to Saipan and Logan. Is there laws that I should be aware of? So the question has to do with firearms here on Saipan. Just as a little bit of trivia, I'll share with you that for many years, um, handguns were illegal here on Saipan. When I came in the mid 2000s, if I'm not mistaken, their handguns, the private ownership of handguns was not allowed. Um, and then a couple, I believe, challenged that local law as being unconstitutional since we are part of the U.S. So, the right to bear arms um, was challenged, and it turns out that the law ended up being struck down. This was several years ago. So since then, yes, it is now possible. And I spoke to a police officer years ago who told me that yes, when the law got struck down, then people did, show up in droves to get firearms. But it doesn't mean the island is any more dangerous. We don't hear any reports of gun violence or anything like that. But yes, there are laws that govern you coming in here. I think, yes, you do have to declare it, and there might be a waiting period where you won't have access to it. This is just what until you get the license or approved or something like that. But I have no idea what the procedure is. So that's something that I'll put in my notes and I will research and I'll do a video on it, or I might post a link to a blog or a website, a local website that has that information. So hope that's helpful. Okay. All right. Is Saipan a good fit for a Westerner of high net worth? Okay, you're making a lot of assumptions right there. Okay, interesting question. Is Saipan a good fit for a Westerner of high net worth? That depends on so many things, but let me see if I can break that apart. So the assumption is that a person of high net worth is somehow different than the average riffraff like me. Um, So you can be of high net worth and live very simply. So if you're asking, um, and I'm really interested in this question, when you say if someone is of high net worth, uh, what do you mean exactly? So be more specific as to what you are referring to if you say it's a good fit. Now, here's what comes to mind immediately. If you are the sort of high net worth person who flaunts your wealth and who leads with money and who is proud of your net worth to such a degree that you make it the most important thing about yourself, then in my opinion, you will be making yourself a target. All right, whether it's for scams, whether it's for um, mercenary women who want to take advantage of you. I'm assuming you're male. So to me, this is just my opinion. To me, that's not a good. If I'm correct in my assumption, it's not a good plan of action for you to come here being a person of high net worth who wants to make that, your defining characteristic. One of the first things when I first landed on Saipan, the very first month I was here, I happened to go to Caesar sauna, and I ran into a fellow. Didn't know him, but we happened to be in the sauna together. And nice guy, just decided to share some information. And the first thing he said to me was his best advice is to play your cards close to your chest. And if you're not familiar with that phrase, that metaphor, it essentially means don't let everybody know everything about you. Don't let everybody know how much you make. Don't let everybody know, what your plans are. Don't let it. There are some people I've met who flaunt their wealth, who flaunt their status, and any society where there are people, where there are haves and have-nots, it, in my opinion, makes you a target. Again, I grew up differently, so I keep stressing this is my opinion. But whether I have $1 million or nothing is none of anyone's business. So my net worth, I'm not going to flaunt it. I still drive a Corolla. In fact, I'd probably never buy a new car. I'd only buy a used car. So there are just certain ways of being that I move through the world. I don't brag about how much I spend. I brag about how little I spend. So that's just me. So so that's. But if you answer again and let me know. Um, okay, cool. So you've answered. Uh, Tax advantages, privacy, and peace of mind only. So the question was, is it a good fit for someone of high net worth in terms of tax advantages? Yes, there are tax advantages. Tax rate is less here. Privacy and peace of mind only. So the privacy part, yeah, you could probably find some neighborhoods where you could live a little bit set off from the public. There are people who live up Mount Tapachau, for example, that is sort of a little bit hard to get to. So there are definitely places you can uh, sequester yourself and separate yourself from the rest of the population. Um, so let's see. Okay, any sea moss growing down the way of Saipan? I haven't seen any sea moss. I get my sea moss from angelbrand.com, Jamaican sea moss. We call it Irish moss. I get my Irish moss from mailed to me. I order from online and buy it here. And yes, Larry Hillblue moved there and he was a billionaire. Okay, could I see mochas from a lemonade stand? I'm not sure what that means. Have you ever thought of having a meet and greet with all the local YouTubers in Saipan, maybe at Sugar Dock, then do a video of it to get to know the local YouTubers to promote each other's channels? Um, the question is, I like this question. Have you ever thought of having a meet and greet with all the local YouTubers on Saipan, maybe at Sugar Dock, and then do a video of it to get to know the local YouTubers to promote each other's channels? Now, if I were a different sort of person, then yes, that would be a great idea. If I worked well with others, if I don't work well, but I don't work well with the other children. So I think there's only one other YouTuber who I've ever met, Bangladeshi fellow. His YouTube's channel is My Journey. I think his is the only, and I've actually made a conscious decision not to watch any other YouTubers' channels. So I know that may seem odd, but in the same way that I chose not to um, when I write a book, for example, I don't read other people's books on the same topics. When I was coming to Saipan, I didn't. Um, Look at websites that had anything negative to say about Saipan. And those of you who've lived here long enough know what I might be talking about. There was a very negative website that I decided I would not look at, and so it wouldn't affect my thought processes and expectations. And similarly, when it comes to YouTubers, I know of all, as I mentioned, just that one fellow. I met him once. Cool guy, and he films, I think, mostly on Tinian, but I don't know any of the other YouTubers. And being the um, uh, introvert and recluse and hermit that I am, I hadn't I had thought of that idea, but it's not something that I plan to do. Okay. U.S. citizen. I would stay for a year before doing long-term lease, and after that, I can find a simple small place for just a few hundred a month. Okay, let me see if I can uh, get this. Okay, I'm going to assume you're saying as a U.S. citizen, I would stay for a year before doing a long-term lease, and after that, can I find a simple small place for just a few hundred a month? Absolutely. So the question is essentially covering two things. Yes, if you're planning to move here, I would suggest, if you can, to come here and check out the lay of the land first. That's always a good idea, wherever you're planning to live, whether it's Thailand or the Philippines or Cambodia or Vietnam, is to take a scouting trip and a reconnaissance mission to come and check out the lay of the land, see if you like it, see if you like the people, see if you like the pace, see if you like the vibe. There are lots of different things that you might not be aware of, especially if you've never lived in another country. There are certain things about life here that you may simply not know to expect. So come here, check it out first, and then at some point, and to do that, you could stay in a cheap hotel. If that's affordable, and then make a decision as to whether you want to stay. And then, yes, you can get an apartment for, and sometimes even a whole house for just a few $100s. That's one of the things that I like about Saipan, is the fact that the rent is cheap. A one-bedroom apartment that might easily cost $1,200 a month in Queens, New York, uh, can cost $300, $400 here on Saipan. So that's a good plan um, for you if you are considering relocating here. Okay, so thanks for that. Larry Hillblum moved there and he was a billionaire. Absolutely. Now, interestingly enough, and I'm going to give you guys a little secret, he's a lawyer here on island who actually was um, local counsel for the Larry Hillblum case. After Larry Hillblum, the founder of DHL, after he died and went missing, there was a huge case to decide on what would happen to his estate. And he ended up fathering a child, and that young fellow ended up being the heir to the Larry Hillblum estate. So I'm actually friends with a lawyer who was part of that case, and I was just speaking to him a few minutes ago about some of the things that he knew about Larry Hillblom. So that's pretty fascinating. But that's just a little teaser. I won't say any more on that. But stay tuned. There might be something coming up that uh, features insights and information that you've never heard before, even if you're familiar with the Larry Hillblom story. Okay. All right. You mentioned that there are many workers from Asia. Are there many workers, tourists, or residents who come from Russian-speaking countries? The reason why that, and I think the exotic foreigner, he knows a little bit more about this region than other people, but for many years, Saipan controlled its own immigration and labor. So when I first came to the island, for example, the CNMI controlled its own immigration laws and its own labor laws. So that's why the minimum wage here on Saipan through the labor laws was much less than it was in the mainland. That's why our immigration policy allowed for work permits that would allow the garment factory workers to come here and work. Now, since then, both immigration and labor are now part of the federal system. But for many years, Saipan had a unique system in which Chinese and Russians could come to Saipan without need of a visa in advance. And the Russian visa part was eliminated under the first Trump administration. But during that time, we had Russians coming here, leasing property, starting businesses, buying land up in or leasing land up in Mount Tapachau. In fact, some of the homes that are for sale up on Tapachau, in some instances, up until recently, you could still see the signs in Cyrillic, text catering to the Russian market. So at this point, there not many Russians living here anymore. We had more people who are brought in on CW visas to cater to that Russian tourist market, but not so much anymore. Okay. Do you know the Cagman area well? I like what I see there, the area to rent place. What's your opinion of the white boy in that area? As I've heard some not so good comments on that area. All right. So um, there are certain things that I would prefer to answer face to face or email to email. And so that question in terms of um, which neighborhoods are perceived to be safer or more risky, you can email me on that or become a member, and I'll do a special video, a members only video on that. Um, all right, how's the fishing? Are there fishing piers? Yes, the entire coast of the island is essentially a fishing pier. I've seen people fishing off the um, on the beach, fishing off Sugar Dock, fishing off the walkway. There's a walkway that people jog and bicycle. That's all along Beach Road on the west coast of the island. People fish there all the time. You'll see people fishing up at Banzai Cliff. So all around the island, people do fish. So yes. All right. Now we're coming up to 11:59. So thank everyone for participating. Let's see, I'll answer a few more questions since we did start a little bit late. So if anyone has any um, questions that they just can't go to sleep without hearing an answer to, please feel free to ask now. But in the meantime, I will just say again that thank everyone for subscribing. If you have, we have now 1,310 subscribers, and we also have now the ability for supporters to become members So click on the join button and become a member if you'd like to support the channel. And what that will do is it will help, just so you guys know, you may not realize this, but after doing 300, I've done 320 videos on this channel and never made a single penny. I do it because I like to share information. I do it because people who are helpful to me before I came to the island, I like to be able to share that with other people as well. But it would help the channel to become a member. I could then um, maybe buy certain equipment, maybe a drone that might help to provide a little more exciting content. It would help with certain equipment, and it would just be very encouraging to for people to show that the information has value. So the membership is a very cool thing, and by becoming a member, it also shows YouTube that the channel is valuable, and that puts the channel in a better position for YouTube to promote it. So the rationale is, okay, if people are willing to subscribe to this channel and this is a more valuable channel, then YouTube pushes it to other people, and we can then start to get more visibility for Saipan. And ultimately, and more visibility means more people finding out about it, and possibly vacationing here, investing in the island. So in the grand scheme of things, it could ultimately help to improve Saipan's economy just by you contributing 99 cents a month for as long as you wish. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. Um, Thanks for the wonderful service you provide. You're quite welcome. Are there any natural water springs on the island that you can get water to drink? We do have reservoirs, natural springs that I'm not familiar with. For people who want fresh drinking water, most people will just set up a water catchment. You'll see that in a lot of areas where people just have a big concrete tank. They'll collect rainwater. I used to live in an apartment that had, in addition to being connected to the CUC, the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation water supply, it also had its own rainwater supply as well. So in terms of fresh water, that might be an option if that's what you're looking for. Is there a movie theater? Okay, these are going to be our last three questions. Um, are there any natural? No, I'm sorry. Is there a movie theater? Yes, we do have one movie theater on the island, and if there's a premiere, one of the advantages of living out here in the Western Pacific in this time zone is if there's a premiere, let's just say the next Star Wars, that hasn't been wokeified, but that's another story. But the next Star Wars comes out, or the next Harry Potter comes out, the folks here on Saipan will be the first ones in the US to see it because we're on a different time zone. We're 14 hours ahead. So the release date, the releases happened here first. So I remember years ago, a friend of mine bragged that he was one of the first to see the latest Star Wars episode because we were here on Saipan. But anyway, let's see. Best place to look at real estate online. I'm very interested. Okay, this is tricky. I've looked at real estate online for Saipan. Where's the best place to look at real estate online? I'm very interested in seeing it and consider moving there with a family of 6. All right, here's the. I think this will be the last question. Here's the thing about the real estate market. From my observation, there are probably just as many places that are not listed as there are places that are listed. So you're probably not getting a good overview of what's available simply by looking online. Because there are many people who have homes for sale but simply do not advertise them through a real estate agent. A lot of homes get passed around through word of mouth. There are people who know the family who know that there's something available. So um, you're With a family of six, I know it's tricky, but your best bet would be to not rely on the real estate companies, and I'm sure I'll make enemies saying this, but to, if possible, find ways to connect with the local population. So, for example, if you're planning to move here with a family of six, I'm going to assume that you might have a job offer. So maybe talk to the employer to find out if they're aware of any homes that might be available or coming up for availability, and find channels where you can become aware of homes. Maybe go on Facebook and look for Saipan real estate on Facebook, Saipan homes on Facebook. There might be people who are simply more comfortable mentioning rooms for rent or apartments for rent or homes for rent on a Facebook page than on through a real estate agent. So is the challenge that I see is that you don't want to commit to anything before you get here and actually see the lay of the land. That's ultimately my best advice, is even if you do find a home through an agent, I wouldn't make a commitment before you actually come and see the lay of the land. As I said, there are certain things that you simply won't be able to gauge from 8,000 miles away, whether the breezes are to your liking, whether the view is really to your liking, whether the noise in the neighborhood with the roosters and the schools is to your liking, whether how the distance driving from home to your workplace. That's something that a lot of people misjudge because they look at a 13-mile by 5-mile island and think that everywhere is within driving distance. But as I've mentioned before, a lot of times once you've lived here long enough, your sense of distance starts to shrink, and a distance that you would have driven in the past in California or New York, now you are unwilling to drive that, so it becomes very tedious. So I always advise people not to commit to anything before they come here and actually see the lay of the land. Coming with a family of six, yeah, that might be a little challenging. Maybe you could do a preliminary trip out here yourself, and then report back to the family what you found. But hope that's helpful in some way. Feel free to email me, for a little bit more detail if I've overlooked anything. All right. Okay. David Parker says we need to get Hollywood back, make it great again. Absolutely. So I know David is on the same page that I am. And for those of you who are not, I'll just share with you that one of the things that people are aware of is that many Hollywood studios and producers are creating products that are destroying, diluting, and damaging the original intellectual property. And as a result, there are people with an agenda, and this may start to get political. There are people with an agenda who are writing scripts not to entertain, but simply to push a particular political or ideological agenda. And as a result, there are many people, possibly like David Barker, who believes that as a result, the quality of content coming out of Hollywood has severely deteriorated over the years. And that's why he said we need to make Hollywood great again. All right. All right. So on that, I'm going to wrap it up. Didn't want to make this any more than an hour. I want to thank people for checking in. Uh, and if anyone wants to be my first member, then let me know. I'll give you a video all to yourself. All right, so on that note, I want to thank everyone for checking in. This is Walt Goodridge. I'm the Jamaican on Saipan. This is the Discover Saipan channel. Our next goal is to reach full monetization that requires 4,000 watch time hours. We've already met the requirement for subscribers. We already have more than 1,000 subscribers. And next is 4,000 watch time hours. We're now at 3,000. and 34, if I remember correctly. So the more videos you watch, I have a video on the sounds of Saipan by the beach. Uh, Turn that on, just leave it running to help boost the watch time hours. Consider joining, spread the word with other people. And thanks for participating. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.